There comes a moment when life no longer whispers, it commands. Do not go back, not to the people who broke their own promises, not to the places where your spirit dimmed, not to the versions of yourself you outgrew in silence. As 2026 approaches, something in the air shifts. A quiet revolution inside you begins to rise. You feel it, a new strength, a new direction, a new clarity pulling you forward with unwavering force. This is the year where hesitation dies, where old cycles collapse, where your past loses its power over your future. From this point on, every step you take moves you further into who you were always meant to become. And once you cross that threshold, there is no returning, only rising, only becoming, only forward. The moment you stop turning back, your life accelerates. There comes a point in life when you finally understand that looking back has cost you more than letting go ever will. It is the moment when you stop reopening doors that were quietly closed for your protection, not your punishment. When you stop searching for reasons to return to what once drained you. When you stop offering your heart to people who only understood your presence when they feared your absence. This moment, soft, powerful, undeniable, is the beginning of your acceleration. Because life does not move for those who cling to what breaks them. It moves for those who are brave enough to release it. And the second you stop turning back, the world begins to open in front of you. New paths appear. New opportunities rise. New energy flows into your days as if the universe had been waiting for you to make this single decision. To face forward. Suddenly, your mind grows clearer. Your emotions calm. Your spirit feels lighter. You no longer walk burdened by memories that once held you captive. Instead, you walk with the quiet strength of someone who knows their worth and no longer negotiates it. You begin to notice how much time you spent holding on to what was already fading, how much of yourself you gave to people who never knew how to hold you, how many chances you offered to situations that refused to grow. But instead of regret, you feel gratitude. Because now you see the truth with unfiltered clarity. You were not stuck. You were loyal. You were patient. You were hopeful in places where hope was not meant to bloom. And yet, this realization doesn't break you. It frees you. The moment you stop turning back is the moment you reclaim everything you once gave away. Your peace, your direction, your identity, your voice. You rise not with rage, but with understanding. Not with noise, but with depth, not with revenge, but with vision. Life accelerates because your energy no longer leaks into dead ends. Your heart no longer fights old battles. Your mind no longer negotiates with doubt. Your steps finally move towards something, not away from someone. And that shift, silent, internal, unstoppable, pushes you forward faster than you ever imagined. You start attracting people who match your sincerity, not your suffering. You meet opportunities that match your strength, not your wounds. You grow into a version of yourself that feels more authentic than anything you have ever been. Moving forward becomes natural because backward no longer makes sense. And with each day, you understand a deeper truth. The past was familiar, but the future is fertile. What you walked away from was not your loss. It was your liberation. Growth didn't truly begin when things ended. It began when you decided not to go back. That single choice, made in quiet determination, becomes the force that accelerates your entire life. You are no longer held by what was. You are powered by what will be. And from this moment on, every step you take is a step forward, stronger, clearer, and finally, truly yours. Memory is not an invitation to return. Memory is a powerful storyteller, but it is not always an honest one. It has a way of softening the sharp edges of the past, painting over the cracks, highlighting the warmth while hiding the wounds. It whispers, "Remember how good it was?" but rarely reminds you of the pain that followed. And so many people lose themselves in the echo of what once felt familiar, mistaking recollection for direction, nostalgia for truth. But memory is not an invitation to return. It is a reminder of how far you've come. You were not meant to walk back into rooms where you were misunderstood, into conversations that stole your peace, into connections that cost you your confidence. The mind may revisit, but the soul knows better. The past is a place to learn from, not to live in. Every time you choose to return, you pick up burdens you already put down, you reopen wounds that were healing, and you silence the growth that fought so hard to rise within you. The heart can be tender, but your destiny demands clarity. What broke you before will not build you now. There is a dangerous comfort in remembering only the good parts. It makes you forget the versions of yourself you had to abandon just to survive. The nights you cried in silence, the moments you questioned your worth, the times you tolerated disrespect simply because you wanted peace more than you wanted fairness. But when memory surfaces, it is not asking you to repeat history. It is asking you to understand it, to see yourself differently, to recognize that you deserved more than you accepted. When you stop romanticizing what hurt you, you reclaim power over your own story. You realize that growth is not about rewriting the past. It is about refusing to let it control your present. And yet, memory is also a teacher. It shows you patterns you must break, lessons you must carry, and boundaries you must enforce. It becomes the compass that guides you away from familiar chaos and toward unfamiliar peace. But it cannot guide you if you treat it as an invitation to return. The people who disappointed you may still live in your memories, but they no longer belong in your future. The moments that shaped you may still echo, but they no longer define your direction. You can honor the past without reliving it. You can remember without reopening. You can reflect without returning. When you understand this, you walk differently. You stop answering calls from old stories. You stop entertaining conversations that lead nowhere. You stop negotiating your worth with people who only valued your silence. Your memory becomes your wisdom, not your weakness. And with every step forward, the past grows smaller, quieter, less powerful. You finally see it for what it was, a chapter, not your identity, a lesson, not a home. And from that clarity comes a freedom that cannot be shaken, because you realize that nothing behind you is worth more than what waits ahead. Memory may remind you of where you've been, but your future reminds you of who you are becoming, and that is where you are meant to go. Strength is built in silence, not in arguments. There comes a time when you finally understand that real strength is not revealed in how loudly you defend yourself, how intensely you argue, or how passionately you try to explain your heart to people committed to misunderstanding you. Strength is born in the quiet moments, the moments when you choose silence over battles that drain you, peace over proving yourself, and dignity over noise. Silence is not weakness, it is mastery. It is the calm certainty of someone who no longer needs to convince anyone of their worth. When you stop arguing with people who twist your words, when you stop explaining yourself to those who only listen to reply, not to understand, you step into a higher level of growth. You stop wasting energy on conversations that lead nowhere. You stop fighting for spaces that shrink your spirit. You stop negotiating with situations that only survive because you keep giving them attention. In silence, you rediscover your strength as something internal, not something borrowed from validation or approval. You realize that you do not need applause to know your impact, nor do you need agreement to trust your truth. Your silence becomes a shield, protecting your peace, guarding your future, and reminding you that not every battle deserves your presence. And the world begins to respond differently. People who once mocked your calm begin to fear what they cannot predict. Those who relied on your reactions become unsettled by your stillness. Those who tried to provoke you start losing power because you no longer feed their control with your attention. Silence exposes intentions more clearly than arguments ever could. When you step back, you begin to see who values harmony and who thrives on conflict. You notice who respects your boundaries and who only respected your ability to tolerate disrespect. Strength is built in these quiet realizations. You grow not by shouting louder, but by choosing where your energy goes and where it no longer will. In silence, you reclaim your clarity. You hear your own thoughts without interruption. You understand your own needs without distortion. You rebuild yourself without outside influence. And this transformation becomes your real power, a power that doesn't need to be displayed to be felt. You stop responding to accusations that have nothing to do with you. You stop explaining your character to those who never cared to know it. You stop defending decisions that were made for your well-being, not their comfort. Your life becomes lighter because you refuse to carry arguments that were never yours to begin with. This is the kind of strength that cannot be shaken because it is rooted in self-control, not reaction. It is the strength of someone who knows their value too deeply to waste time proving it. It is the strength of someone who has learned that silence is not empty. It is full of discipline, healing, and elevation. And once you discover what silence builds within you, you will never again allow chaos to dictate your responses. You will never again let noise drown your intuition. You will never again fight to be understood by minds not ready to understand you. Instead, you move with calm, quiet certainty, knowing that your silence carries more power than any argument ever could. Your future cannot begin if you keep revisiting old wounds. There is a certain heaviness that follows you when you keep returning to the places where your heart once broke, a weight that slows your steps and clouds your vision. Old wounds have a way of pulling you backward, not because they still matter, but because you keep reopening them with memories, doubts, and what-ifs. But your future, your real future, cannot begin until you finally stop revisiting the pain that shaped you. You cannot rise while gripping the echoes of moments that weakened you. You cannot evolve while replaying stories that were meant to end. Healing is not about revisiting the wound. It is about refusing to let it govern your direction. Every time you look back, you breathe life into something that no longer deserves space in your present. You delay the opportunities waiting to meet you. You silence the growth that has been trying to surface. Your future is calling you with a voice stronger than your past, but it cannot guide you if you keep walking in circles around the same hurt. Pain may be part of your story, but it was never meant to become your identity. You are not what happened to you. You are who you decided to become after it. The truth is, some wounds don't reopen because the pain is still there. They reopen because your mind hasn't learned to let go of the story. You revisit people who once disappointed you, hoping they've changed. You revisit moments that broke you, hoping they'll make sense. You revisit mistakes, thinking clarity will erase regret. But all of this keeps you tied to a timeline that no longer exists. When you keep touching the past, you keep bleeding from what was supposed to be healed. The wound becomes memory, and the memory becomes a chain. Your future stays waiting, life stays paused. You remain stuck between where you were and where you're meant to go. But when you finally decide to stop revisiting what hurt you, you regain your power, you redirect your heartbeat, you reclaim your life. You begin to see that every wound you carried was not a sign of weakness, but a sign of survival. You endured what many never could. You stood in storms that tried to break your spirit. You walked through darkness that tried to erase your hope. And yet, here you are, still rising, still breathing, still capable of rebuilding yourself. This realization becomes the moment everything shifts. You no longer revisit the wound to understand it. You rise from it to outgrow it. You no longer need answers to why it happened. You focus on what it taught you. You no longer seek closure from others. You give closure to yourself. Because your healing is not dependent on the past. It is anchored in your future. And your future becomes brighter the moment you stop returning to what once dimmed your light. The moment you stop revisiting old wounds, you make space for new strength, new clarity, new beginnings. You stop living like your past is your prison and start living like your future is your purpose. Your future cannot begin while you hold on to pain, but the moment you release it, you step into a life that finally feels like it was meant for you, unburdened, unstoppable, and free. 2026 demands a new version of you. There comes a year that does not ask politely for your transformation. It demands it. And 2026 is that year. A year that will not wait for your hesitation, your doubts, or your attachment to familiar pain. It is a year that requires your evolution, not your excuses. You cannot enter it carrying the same fears you clung to in the past. You cannot rise in it with the same habits that once exhausted you. You cannot grow in it with the same people who only stood beside you when it was convenient for them. 2026 will demand a version of you that is braver, clearer, calmer, stronger. a version of you that no longer bends for acceptance, no longer apologizes for boundaries, and no longer loses itself to keep others comfortable. This is the year where you step into your voice without trembling, into your purpose without doubting, into your strength without shrinking. It is the year where you choose yourself boldly, not quietly. The year where your decisions echo with intention, your presence carries conviction, and your heart finally stands firm in its own worth. You were not created to live the same year repeatedly. You were created to rise beyond everything that tried to limit you. 2026 demands a new version of you because the old version has completed its mission. The version of you that survived the heartbreaks, disappointments, betrayals, and endings did its job. It carried you through all the storms no one else knew you were facing. But you cannot drag that version into the future and expect transformation. You cannot expect new blessings with old patterns. Growth requires shedding. It requires outgrowing the stories you told yourself just to keep going. It requires releasing the people you had to shrink for, the situations you had to tolerate, the identities you had to wear just to feel accepted. In 2026, you rise without asking for permission. You set standards instead of settling. You protect your peace instead of defending your pain. You make choices from wisdom, not wounds. And slowly, you begin to recognize a deeper truth. You were never meant to remain who you were. You were meant to become more. This new version of you will not chase anyone. It will not fear endings. It will not cling to temporary comfort. It will not explain its value. It will not return to cycles disguised as second chances. Instead, it will walk with a stillness that comes from understanding itself fully. It will choose relationships that honor its soul, not its weaknesses. It will trust the timing of its life, not the noise of its doubts. It will embrace change, not resist it. This version of you will no longer view fear as a wall. It will treat it as a doorway. And with every step forward, it will feel lighter, freer, more aligned with the person you were always capable of becoming. This is why 2026 demands a new you, because everything you desire, everything you've prayed for, everything you've worked for exists in a higher version of yourself. It does not live in your past. It does not live in the habits that once drained you. It does not live in the comfort zones that kept you small. Your next level is waiting in the version of you that chooses growth over familiarity, courage over fear, peace over chaos, and purpose over hesitation. 2026 is not just another year. It is your turning point, your awakening, your transformation. And once you step into this new version of yourself, there will be no going back, only rising, only becoming, only forward.